Hi, both. Thank you very much for joining me today on this lovely sunny Wednesday. How are you doing?
All well yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. How about you, Stephen?
Yeah, very well, thank you. As you say, it's sunny outside, so all good.
I know, we're pushing through. I was very aware that I said Stephen could have referred to either of you. So we're going to have a Stephen L and Stephen B today just to keep things straightforward. So spring statement, we're back again to discuss what's been announced today, which, as we were just having the chat just before this discussion started, not a lot, and maybe the key is in what wasn't said as opposed to what was. I still think there's a lot that's quite telling in what was said and what wasn't said. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that today. I mean, to kick us off, what are the standout takeaways from the announcement?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Gabby, it was there were a lot of things that were talked about that may be announced, or a few things that were talked about that may be announced, and actually nothing really new was announced. They talked about the growth has been downgraded, predicted growth has been downgraded from 2% to 1%. But the chancellor hopes that with the changes that she's put in place today, that will actually increase. So they're estimated growth over the next 4 years of 1.9% next year, 1.8% in 2027. They talked about inflation as well. So the Bank of England target rate of inflation is 2%, and we all know that over the years it's been nowhere near 2%. They're expecting inflation to average at about 3.2% this year, which is up from the previous forecast, but they do expect the inflation to fall back in line or back down to about 2.1% by 2026, so getting nearer to that government target.
Yeah. And what about you, Stephen L? Is there anything that you feel you took away from this today?
Yeah, I think it was quite basic. Especially with the new government coming into play with the last budget, they made quite a big statement and changes there. I think what a really good aspect of it was ISAs not getting touched. There was a lot of rumours that would be reduced, and that's still at £20,000, which is really good.
Yeah.
I think obviously tax brackets remain frozen, so it does mean a lot of people will be increasing their tax, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think they said around 3 million people will be increasing their tax bracket, which is huge.
Yeah.
And I think stamp duty as well, where people looking for their first time home, obviously the cap was 425, now dropping 300. So it will mean a lot more first time buyers will have to be saving a bit more to get their first home.
Yeah. No, they're all really good points. I think, again, going back to last October, there were some quite significant changes that were announced then that are about to come into effect from next month. I think it'd be really good to touch on those for a bit, just to talk about what dental professionals can expect heading into April, what they perhaps need to prepare for if they haven't done so already. So, yeah, in your opinion, what are the key things that people need to look out for over the next few weeks?
I think the key thing is obviously making sure they're on track with everything. Obviously, national insurance will be increasing. Obviously, minimum wage will be increasing as well. Inflation increasing. So there's a lot of things which will be increasing, and ultimately this could mean clients for dentists seeing those costs because dental equipment will increase, and principals will then have to think, oh, how can I recuperate this money? So it could mean more challenging times ahead. However, they have suggested inflation will go down eventually, but it doesn't seem like that at the moment.
Yeah. What about you, Stephen B?
Yeah, I think Stephen sort of talked about it from a dental practice perspective. I think the other side of it is disposable income for patients. There's a lot of things, as Steve mentioned, the income tax rates thresholds have been frozen, so less in people's pockets. You've also got there's a number of things. You've got obviously the announcement in the autumn budget was the private school fees, which will now be VAT to pay on those. So it's sort of people are feeling the pinch. They were already feeling the pinch before. They'll be still feeling the pinch because there haven't really been any concessions made, which weren't expected during this statement. So people will be feeling the pinch. So, what that means to dental practices, obviously, particularly private dental practices, is whether patients will still have the money to pay for that private care. Nothing was really announced in terms of NHS dentistry, which was a surprise. There was a brief mention of the NHS, increased funding in the NHS, but once again, dental seems to have been ignored, which isn't really a surprise, to be honest.
Unfortunately not.
It's been away for a number of years. So, yeah, I think for me, we people are already feeling the pinch, and it's going to continue. So I think more hopefully short-term pain for dental businesses.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could go back to the point on inflation. So you said it's now predicted to sort of hover around 3.2, which is more than what was previously predicted. How significant do you think this is for perhaps patient uptake, for example? So obviously what will that mean for perhaps private practices in particular? Do you expect them to perhaps anticipate a fall in the amount of patients coming through their doors, or do you think it will have not much of an effect on that?
I think obviously in regards to patients, obviously a lot of things are increasing. So not only that, electrical cars are going to be taxed now.
Yeah.
I think council tax on average is going up by £100. Water bills are going up. So as a general for a client, with all these increases, they might be looking into, should I go to the NHS instead of going private, and weighing up options. So it could mean a decrease in private clients for principals. Unfortunately, time can only tell what will actually occur in that sense. Hopefully inflation does go down, which they do think by 2027, but unfortunately we just have to wait till then. How about you, Stephen? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think you're right there. As we said, there's so much happening, there's so much increase in costs, and obviously the inflationary pressure is making the cost of everything more expensive, weekly shopping, so people are going to be feeling the pinch. Unfortunately there's not sufficient NHS appointments. I know, they're talking about making more appointments available. A lot of people don't have the choice, particularly in some sort of dental deserts where the NHS contracts aren't available and the NHS dentists aren't available. So it's difficult to say in terms of the private practice. Perhaps maybe sort of more cosmetic private treatments, I suppose, could be affected in the short term. At the end of the day, if patients don't have access to NHS and they're in need of dental care, really for some patients, private is their only option. So I think they're still going to see, private practices will still see, be still seeing patients. They may have an increase slightly, but I think cosmetic dentistry, yes, I can see that being hit with a pinch. Very difficult to say, really. But once again, it's more pressure as well as sort of the general public and the squeeze they're feeling on the expenditure. As Steve alluded to, the national insurance increases. Inflation is going to increase the cost of materials and everything else associated with dental practices. So practices are really going to continue to still feel the pinch at this time.
Yeah, I know your colleague Ian Stevenson said it was very short on good news, this budget for dentists. So very much in the same tone as what you guys are talking about there. But is there anything here that we can feel a little bit more uplifted or perhaps positive about? I always like to kind of pick out some positive points, because often we do tend to focus on what wasn't said or what was said that will have a perhaps detrimental impact. Is there anything that perhaps we should feel relief about? I know something was touched on earlier about certain things, perhaps like ISAs, for example, weren't, which is obviously a positive thing. Is there anything else like that?
Obviously, the ISAs is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Great tax efficient wrapper for investments. So that being untouched is a great thing for anyone, potentially. Obviously, still 2027 with pensions. The only issue is they haven't really given us a lot of information in what these changes, and mainly, will it also include the NHS pension scheme with those changes?
Okay.
So again, in the next budget, that's when more information will come regarding that. But can't really see anything. How about you, Stephen? Can you see anything?
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of reiterate and clarify a bit what Stephen was saying, there was a lot of announcements in the autumn budget, and one thing that was announced is, we got a lot of clients questions about this currently. There was an announcement in the autumn budget that potentially pensions will fall inside of the estate for inheritance tax purposes, which doesn't currently happen at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's still sort of under consultation. I mean, for me, I guess the positives would be, for me, it's more, as I say, hopefully short-term pain. We took some positives out of the announcements. Yes, inflation is not quite where we want it to be at the moment. Growth has been downgraded, but given the forecast that they've announced today, with all of the changes that they're making, for example, with cuts to welfare, for example, and the money they're saving, yes, they're putting extra money into ultimately, by trying to sort of get a grip on the nation's finances, I think the positive is that if they achieve that, then things are looking a lot more positive, sort of moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well we've had quite a few. Well, the last few years have been really tough generally, I think, for the UK and just working people. So but we've pushed through. So like you say, short-term pain.
Yeah.
Just feeling, I guess, a little bit, repetitive in a way. I think people are getting probably a little bit fed up of having to shoulder these kinds of costs without seeing much back for it. So it's dentistry is very robust. I think that's been proven, and hopefully this will be something that can be kind of pushed through and won't have too much of an impact. But there are definitely things there that you've mentioned that people will need to consider and take quite seriously to ensure that they are in a good position to go forward.
And I think that's ultimately it. With our clients, we're always talking to clients. Whenever there's any changes, whether it be in sort of legislation, whether it be in personal circumstances, we're always sort of reiterating to clients that it's a good idea to take financial advice at all times. And if you're not sure, speak to someone who understands it. Book appointments. We can talk to you about these things and how they may affect you personally.
Yeah.
And sort of tailor that to your individual circumstances as a whole, really. So the advice has always been seek specialist financial advice.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had your work cut out for you these last 4 or 5 months. Hopefully, more clarification on the impact that these changes will have, particularly the ones that were mentioned in the autumn budget back in October, so that you can kind of plan accordingly and with the right information at hand. But I can imagine that's quite frustrating when you're kind of in limbo, not really fully understanding how things will take effect. If people do want to reach out to you guys, how's the best way for them to do that? Just to go to the website?
Just go on our website, just Google Wesleyan, and from there you can literally just find an advisor, a local advisor in your area.
Perfect.
From there, you can just book an appointment. We can have a chat and just go through options with yourselves and really just build a relationship from there.
Wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for giving up some of your afternoon today. I know it wasn't the most overt budget in the sense. It didn't have a lot of key moments, and a lot of what was mentioned today about welfare and public service cuts and things like that perhaps isn't as applicable to dentistry as a lot of other things that could have been mentioned. So not a lot to work with there, but definitely lots that dental professionals can do and prepare for in advance of April and beyond. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
Perfect. Right, take care.
Yeah, you too.